Of the Brisbane Planning Commission will now come to order. Staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner Patel. Here. Commissioner Goody.
Present.
Commissioner Funka. And Chair Sayasan.
Here. And
Oh, no, for the record, thank you, that Commissioner Lau is absent tonight.
okay, thank you. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Consent calendar. If there is any member of the public who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar, please raise your hand or call in. I see no one in the audience. Staff, please set a timer for 30 seconds for folks to call in. And while we're waiting, would any commissioner like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay.
All right, 30 seconds has elapsed and no one has raised their hand.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adopt, please?
So moved.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. Oral communications. If anyone wishes to address the commission concerning items not on tonight's agenda, please raise your hand. Michelle Salmon?
When I was last here, I asked about the CCNRs in the development agreement for the Northeast Ridge, and the restrictions that haven't been kept to. And I'm wondering if we've made any progress on that at all. I attended the Natural Resource Management field trip meeting, quarterly meeting yesterday up on the mountain with the county and Fish and Wildlife and lots of other people. And Clippy Hill was brought up of why it's not yet in the county, and because I raised the issue about some of the habitat restoration not being done along Guadalupe Canyon Parkway, which is supposed to be a flyway for the Clippy butterflies. And it's been a dozen years, so that sort of spurred me to come back again tonight and ask again, have we resolved the issues surrounding the CCNRs being held up being upheld and the development agreement being upheld in terms of the conditions of like no closed fencing, no invasive species are to be planted in your yard, etc. So I'm going to keep bringing it up because it has just not, it's not been satisfactory, the agreement
Okay.
being upkept. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, do you know, or is there there are 3 different communities up there, as you know. Do you know which one of these your issue or your concern pertains to?
Well, my primary concern is with the 2 houses, full-size houses, that were allowed through administrative, I don't know what you call it, but administrative, instead of coming to board the planning commission, were allowed to enclose their courtyards and add on to the square footage of your house. And that is actually, I believe, not allowed in the CCNRs and the development agreement. And as I explained at the last meeting, it has the ability to alter the whole flow of how that was developed. It's a lot of those houses are built on what I would call cut and fill. It's not on solid ground. And so that's part of the reason those things were put in the CCNRs. And also just the whole, ability of having less mega mansions. They were supposed to be restricted on that. So, but the other 2 developments, they also have different issues that need to be upheld, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, shall we set a 1-minute timer for folks to call in?
$15 seconds. All right, 60 seconds has elapsed and no one has raised their hand.
Okay, thank you. Next is written communications. We have none, so I will move to the next item, which is new business. Tonight, we have a public hearing concerning 60 Industrial Way, use permit 2025-UP-01, M-1 district. The applicant is Mickey Kelley, and the owner is Sierra Hotel Management Corp. The applicant seeks a use permit for an automobile repair facility in the approximately 10,200 square foot northern portion of the single-story building. This project is categorically exempt from environmental review under CEQA Guidelines Section 15301. Staff, may we have the presentation?
Yes, thank you. The applicant requests approval of a use permit for 60 Industrial Way. This is to allow for an automobile repair facility which would primarily service fleet taxis. The facility would be within the approximately 10,200 square foot northern portion of the building at 60 to 130 Industrial Way. The building is a single-story metal warehouse and includes 2 grandfathered automotive repair facilities at its opposite end at 130 Industrial Way. Historically, auto repair facilities have been permitted by right within this district. However, in 2015, the permitted and conditional uses were updated and heavy equipment repair and auto repair were made conditional uses at that time. And so doing, existing repair facilities became grandfathered uses. They could continue to operate without a use permit. However, any new auto repair facilities were required to apply for a conditional use permit. Earlier this year, the applicant submitted for a business license and a conditional use permit for an auto repair facility with 3 lifts plus an area for auto body repairs. In the course of processing the permit, it was found that the business had already already begun operations at the site, so approval of this application would allow the use to continue. Immediately adjacent to the proposed use within the same building at 80 Industrial Way is a warehouse office for Flywheel Taxi. The proposed auto repair use is intended primarily to serve vehicles for this adjacent use. Other nearby uses include a contractor's office, storage yard, and Bay Shore Sanitary District pump station immediately to the north. Across Industrial Way to the east are outdoor vehicle storage yard, a contractor's warehouses, and an auto body shop. Bayshore Boulevard borders the site to the west, and that's screened behind trees and shrubs with vacant lands and also PG&E substation across the street from that. The nearest residential uses are beyond those sites at least a quarter-mile away. The site is accessed from Industrial Way by a loop driveway along its northwest and south sides. And there's a signalized intersection at Industrial Way and Bayshore Boulevard. The business would operate with 3 lifts, as I mentioned, for mechanical service, and then 1 area or bay for body work. Initially, the applicant plans to have painting work done off-site, but has requested that a paint booth also be allowed if needed in the future. And that would be subject to acquiring an air permit through BAA QMD. The applicant's proposed description includes that they would employ 3 people, 3 mechanics. Operational hours are proposed to be 7 to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. However, based on the isolated and industrial nature of the area, staff suggests that the permit will be allowed to be open-ended for operation days and for hours. This would be to allow for occasional work that might need to extend beyond their planned hours of operation, and that would be subject to clean, quiet, and safe operations per the conditions of approval. Note that there's no requirement for a night operations permit in this district, but the Planning Commission may impose restrictions through this use permit if there is a current concern. All materials would be required to be stored inside the building as provided in the use conditions of approval. 14 parking spaces are proposed to be striped along the drive aisle and marked for this suite. This would be subject to a building permit. Additional space is also available inside the facility for staging cars. The parking would meet and exceed the off-street parking requirement of 11 spaces based on the project description. Given these operational parameters and conditions of approval, the proposed business would meet the required findings as detailed in the agenda report. And I would like to add a clarifying provision to operational condition B that one of the permit requirements would be to have a state industrial general permit for stormwater, so that it's covered, but I'd like to clarify that. And also then on operational condition B that floor drains be documented that they either do not exist or that they drain directly to the sanitary sewer per stormwater requirements. And they have indicated that they do not have floor drains, but we'd like to see documentation of that. In brief, the use would not be detrimental to the health, safety, and comfort and general welfare of persons working in the neighborhood. And there's nobody that resides in the area. The other finding, or part of that finding, is it would not be injurious or detrimental to the property or improvements in the neighborhood or the general welfare of the city. So finally, this application was provided to the North County Fire, Public Works, Police, and Building Department for review and comment, and none of the departments raised concerns given the conditions of approval. So in closing, staff recommends approval of use permit 2025 UP1, the adoption of the resolution.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Commissioner Funke?
Reading it, just one, I understand that the business had already started operating earlier. I just wondering how that had happened. How does that, I don't, it's not an objection, it's just a kind of a curiosity question.
I asked the same question, and my understanding is that they were not fully aware of the requirements with the city and had not checked. But the applicant is here today if he wants to clarify that.
Yeah,
welcome
that's
to.
all right. I mean, if staff didn't find that a reason to object, then, you know, it's fine.
Okay, Commissioner Patel?
I'm just wondering about the open-ended days of operation and times. I just feel like that starts opening up like that entire area to have open-ended days and operation of times for other businesses there. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand why we would want that. Because although it's kind of far away, my concerns are, my experiences, and I could be totally wrong, is the noise in Brisbane sort of travels because of the mountain. And so when we leave it open-ended, like they can work at 10 o'clock at night, or their lights are going to be on at 10 o'clock at night, I don't know if that becomes problematic.
So most of the uses that operate out there, including the existing automobile repair facilities, do not have restrictions on hours since there's no night operations permit requirement. So this would be essentially treating them as the same as others. They've proposed lesser hours, so that could be a point that, you know, if you feel fit to reduce those hours. An example, a different district which has residential uses would be the NCRO 2 along Visitation Avenue has restrictions after 10 and before 5 a.m. the next day. So those are considered night operations and require a special permit. So that would be one example of a different type of, it's a different area, but might be applied here if you wanted something as a compromise.
Commissioner Gooding?
Yeah, my understanding is that the conditions proposed by staff included a provision that the planning department could revisit the hours issue if there were any complaints or issues that arose. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know if you want to answer this, Ken, or I can ask the applicant, but do you know how long they've been operating without a permit?
I don't have an exact date, but I believe it's from the first quarter of this year sometime.
And do you know what their current hours of operation is?
Presumably, it would be what they have proposed in their
So 7 a.m. to 5
7
p.m.
to 5,
Okay.
right?
Okay, and you said that other businesses in that area currently have no time restrictions on them? Like they can operate whenever they please?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. No questions, thank you. Well, I will now open the public hearing, and let's hear first from the applicant first. Yes, hi. Would you like to make any statements or anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for the applicant?
I guess maybe you can answer why you didn't get a permit, because it seemed to be a question that everybody wanted to know.
Two things. We're unaware of the system in Brisbane initially. And the owner of the business, Mustafa, has his own small fleet of cabs within Flywheel Taxi, and he's not open for business. He's just been repairing his own cabs because we've been paying rent, and he's stretched thin. For quite a while, he's been We haven't had a shop. He's been sending cabs out, and the cost has been prohibitive.
So can I clarify, are you the applicant, or are you one of his employees or partners or what?
I work for him in Flywheel Taxi. He's the general manager there, and I work for him over there, and I'm just helping him out.
And who is going to be operating the repair facility?
Muwafaq Mustafa.
Okay.
He wanted to be here, but he's at his daughter's graduation in DC.
Okay. All right. Okay, thanks.
And so you're one of the workers there?
Technically, no.
Okay, okay, but you're familiar with their hours of operation, so they've been working from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.?
More like 8 to 5 right now.
Okay, 8 to 5.
Is he, sorry,
Go
is
ahead.
he just going to be repairing his own taxi cabs there?
No, it's all he's doing right now, just to get by until we get this done. But the rest of the Flywheel taxis, and we have partner fleets that I'm sure he'll be working on, smaller cab companies.
Do you foresee using it past 7 to 5?
Best guess, yes. I mean, there might be days somebody works till 6 to get somebody back on the road. I doubt if I'll see him get there before 7.
Any other questions? Commissioner Gooding?
No, I have one more question. It's probably for staff, not for the applicant. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Salmon?
I definitely have problems with some of this. I mean, first of all, have you ever heard an impact wrench when they take the lug nuts off of a tire? It's really loud, really loud. And a lot of the operations in regards to working on cars can be really loud. I know because my dad lost his hearing from doing that. And while most of the Brisbane residents don't live very close to the operation, the people who live in Daly City, right past off of Main Street, they're like a quarter of a mile away and at the same level as this, and they will definitely hear that noise, and as well as the proposed high-rise that they want to build at the ill-fated Midway Village site. So besides people in Brisbane, it is definitely not isolated from residential at all. We're just not looking at, the people in Brisbane who are going to call and complain. And so why would we want to do 24/7, allow any opportunity for 24/7 operation that would be noisy, that would disturb other people, not just Brisbane residents? It's not fair. We would be up in arms if South City came and started jackhammering in front of Brisbane, where woke everybody up. It's just not right. And a couple of questions came up. So noise and vibration, it definitely impacts that. But it also impacts other things like the natural wildlife that's right across the street from that, the Peking Handicraft and Levinson properties. I'm still hoping that we can actually bring this back to habitat. But I really have a question also about trust. I mean, what kind of a business owner doesn't know you need a permit to run that kind of business and not seek it out? That's a little bit weird to me. And I tried to look up the applicant in Sierra Hotel Management Corp, and I could not find anything at all. So I'm kind of a little bit edgy about that, especially if they do intend to start painting as well. Who's to say they would not start doing that without a permit and without the proper things from the Bay Area air quality management and paint booths and all of that. And then it begs the question, if they don't have floor drains, where does it drain? Because there's definitely going to be fluids. If you've ever had a mishap changing oil or whatever, I mean, where does that drain if there are no floor drains? That's a big question for me. Or even if it flooded, where would it drain to? And I just found it, I really don't think that the planning department should recommend 24/7 hour operation for any business when that goes above and beyond. I mean, we do have a noise ordinance in Brisbane, and even for construction, it's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. And I can assure you those are long hours when you've got somebody making a lot of noise near where you live. So there's just a couple of things in here that just really bother me. The residential use, I mean, it's really close to residential. It still should be a non-conforming use, and it's not isolated. And I'm concerned about when they start doing paint, and where does it drain? And there's just a couple of things that just really bothered me about it. Less than a quarter mile away from people living there, houses. So I think we need to modify this and go back and review it much more closely, and the allowed uses and the monitoring of it. So thank you. Sorry, I mean, I loved Sunset Garage. I went there, but they had reasonable hours of operation. And as you move further down Industrial Way, there's more of a buffer because the hillside going up to Bay Shore gets higher because Bay Shore goes up and Industrial Way is flat. This building at 60 Industrial Way is still in the area that's very flat, direct line of sight to where the houses are, and I think it's Liberty Drive or something like that, and direct line of sight to the Habitat and Martin Substation. So it's really not isolated at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we give opportunities for folks to call in? How about we set a 2-minute timer and display the information?
While that's happening, can I ask you a question? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So what does happen if there's no drains?
It's going to have to meet public works requirements, and if they require something, it's going to be required through a building permit. But my understanding was that they wanted to make sure that if there were floor drains, that they drain to the sanitary sewer.
If there's a floor, I don't know anything about how all of these things are constructed, so I'm just gonna ask them questions that may be really ignorant. I'm sorry. If you have something like a automobile repair shop and you have a floor drain, that wouldn't go directly, that would go to something else, right? Before it went into the regular sewer system. Because you wouldn't want you wouldn't want oil or even oil or water that was washing away oil to go directly into the sewer system, right?
That is my understanding, that they would have some sort of some sort of way to contain any spills right then and there before they flowed to anything. The applicant may be able to answer this question as to their practices.
So Ken, if we're not, okay, you said Public Works would deal with that. If we wanted to make sure that that was taken care of, then we can put that in the conditions of approval.
What I'm suggesting is that the drainage within the facility meet the requirements of Public Works, and that would be a condition of approval.
Okay. Any further questions for staff?
Yeah. Is that currently a condition of the permit, or is that something that we should actually ask you folks to include?
It's something I would add to the condition just as a clarifying condition, part of condition under operational condition B, which speaks to the business shall operate in a safe, clean, quiet manner and comply with all licensing and storage requirements applicable to the operation of automotive repair facility, and adding documentation to Department of Public Works that any floor drains are connected directly to the city's sanitary sewer.
Okay, thank you. Can I have one more point?
Sure.
You know, we have, over the years, occasionally gotten permit applications that included the fact that the applicant had already been operating, without a permit, and it's one of my little bees in bonnet about permit applications, and I was wondering what the remedy is. Let me back up a paragraph. My suggestion to my fellow commissioners is that we might want to ask our council what remedy or enforcement provision we or the city has to have some sort of, pain point for applicants who just go ahead and merely go about doing business without getting the permit that they should know they need, because ignorance of the law is no excuse.
I think we've been through this, and we do have penalties in place, right? It's just discretion on whether they're imposed. Is that correct?
There are penalties in place for code enforcement. Generally, if an application is made and in the course of processing it, such as this, we find out that they're out of compliance already, but they are trying to rectify it, then we don't generally undertake code enforcement in that case. If it were to be denied, then it would essentially go into code enforcement right away to have them remove themselves from the facility.
So I get, there's two sides of this argument. One side of the argument is we should crack down on folks who just, try to blow off the requirements and then for some reason or another decide to go ahead and file an application. The other side of the argument is we should encourage people to come in and ask for forgiveness rather, once they haven't gotten permission, just to get folks inside the tent. I get that. But is there any sort of middle ground that you folks would agree with me on?
Yes.
To have some kind of slight hammer or slap on the wrist or ruler on the knuckles, whatever school you went to.
Well, maybe we can do like a study session on how we're treating those cases and what our enforcement actions are or something like that, and make recommendations.
Yeah, perhaps. I just, there's a lot of, these aren't really difficult things to do. And they're important. There's pollution involved, there's noise, there's impact on neighbors, there's impact on other businesses. It's not a small thing to get the permit you're supposed to get. And I'm kind of, I'm annoyed on behalf of the public for folks who don't comply until somebody tells them they have to. It's just not, it's not fair.
So can you clarify that for me? So are you saying that there are no penalties we can impose other than denying the use permit?
I'm not saying that there's not. I think it's a matter of practice, and I can bring this back to Director Zwicky to clarify and bring up your concerns, and possibly, as it was suggested, have this as an item initiated by the commission for further discussion. But I think it's when they voluntarily come forward, it has not been staff's practice to then enter into code enforcement, but rather to go ahead and process the permit.
They could, but they don't.
Yeah, because I guess the concern is, so we don't want to set a precedent where someone is acting out of compliance for 2 years and then decides to come clean. And so we do nothing, so I don't want to encourage others to do the same thing.
I concur.
So, I don't know, as to this particular applicant, do we want to impose some type of, I don't know, condition, some type of, or penalty or anything? Let's say we approve this, but we would approve this with condition that there's some punishment attached to it. Can we do that? Or is this something that we address in the future?
I guess I kind of feel, I'm inclined to think if people come forward voluntarily, there's nothing egregious going on, there's no oil running into the streets, or, you know, huge noise going on all the time, they came forward voluntarily. In that, so I think I'm okay with case by case. I don't, you know, I'm a little bit surprised that it was only discovered during the permitting process. I don't understand why, for example, the city doesn't know what businesses are operating and just go down the list and say, hey, there's no permit. But that seems a little strange to me, like that you wouldn't, as a city, know that there is a garage operating there, and so I feel like as a city we kind of share the blame, and I would be very happy to impose penalties if there was some bad stuff going on. But in this case, as far as we know, there isn't.
My understanding is they hadn't applied for a business license yet either, is that correct?
They have applied for a business license, but we haven't processed it because they don't have a use permit.
But they had been physically operating before they had applied for a business license, is my understanding from the staff report. So the
That's
city,
staff's
so the city
understanding
would,
too. The timeline is not entirely clear.
so, you know, other than patrolling the city streets to look for businesses, the city would not have known they were operating yet, because they hadn't applied for a business license either. So, yeah, I don't think this is a mortal cardinal sin for this particular business. It's just as a general proposition. To me, it's mildly disturbing that folks can decide to apply whenever it suits them rather than
Oh, yeah.
on the front end.
I agree. But I wonder which way it goes. It's like, of course, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Through
kind of
the
feel the
chair,
city
I
should know
might
what's that?
suggest, I think we still have the public hearing open if we're
That's right.
into
We're just
discussion.
debating here.
Yeah,
If you
well,
wanted to.
did anybody call in, Jeremiah?
No, and we've had this slide up for
Okay,
almost 20 minutes, like
Okay,
you almost
okay.
said first.
so may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, now we can resume our discussion, I guess, so Ken, were you about to say something? No?
No.
Okay, you were just reminding me to
Checking
close the
on me,
public
yeah.
hearing, okay. Who wants to start discussions? Commissioner Patel?
This is my take on it, is we're talking about customs and habits of the planning department, right? In terms of finding or not finding, and culture in terms of people can operate businesses, but if they come and apply for it, then they're not gonna do enforcement actions because of whatever. And if we want to change that, that would be like a systemic thing. I don't know if we're gonna do it just for this applicant, and we can talk to the director or the planning commission in general, or the planning department in general about their practices. But if their practice is that if someone is not compliant and then they become compliant and then they don't find, like, I don't know if it'd be fair if we just said, in this one particular case, we're gonna assess a fine, right? Like if that was their custom and habit, we can ask them maybe to change their custom and habit to something different, or we can ask them to, or we can go to city council and say, this is their custom and habit, we don't approve of it, I think that you guys need to change it, and tell them that they need to change their custom and habit. But I don't know if we take it out on this particular person, if that's their custom and habit.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's not, this is probably not the time or place to use one applicant as a whipping boy for the notion that we're uncomfortable with infinitely flexible enforcement process. But I think it's a conversation that we should probably have.
Yeah. I have a question. Who what division was going to make sure about the drainage? Who was that again?
Public Works.
Public Works, okay. So I would say two things. I would say, I would add language in there that says that the business shall ensure that the facilities are compliant with all environmental regulations as directed by Public Works, including drainage.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I could get more excited about that than I could about the permit itself. And the other thing, I guess, is the noise. I don't know that if all the other businesses operating on Industrial Way do have unlimited hours, I don't know why we would restrict this one in particular. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I guess the concern that Michelle Salmon Rose made was that analysis was based on maybe an understanding that there weren't houses in the area. And my take on it would be, if they said they were going to work all the hours of the night, it would be a big deal, right? But why not just, they said they're going to work 7 to 6, so why not limit it to 7 to 6? And if they need to work out of those hours, they can come back and ask for operation outside of those hours.
I'm in agreement with Commissioner Patel. I think they say they work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. or about. I think we put that into the condition of approval, is that is your operating hours. I'm actually opposed to the 24-hour, business operation. I'm actually shocked that other people have no restrictions because, I looked at an aerial view of the residents across the way, and there's a lot of homes there. So if this auto repair shop is working and metals are clanging or machinery is grinding, and let's say it's a hot night and their windows or doors are open, and then the residents have their windows open, I mean, you can imagine the potential noise. And, even living in Brisbane, sometimes, I'm awoken by noise and I, look outside and I'm thinking, where's that coming from? You don't know where the noise is coming from, so if, let's say, these residents hear noise, who would they complain to? They wouldn't know where the noise is. And we may be imposing on these people to live with that kind of noise. And under the statute, I was reading the statute, Brisbane Municipal Code 170.40.060 subdivision B, it says that we cannot grant a use permit unless we find that it will not be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, and general welfare of persons residing in the area. So we have to make that finding. And if we cannot make a finding that it won't be detrimental, we can't grant this use permit. And I don't think we have enough facts to make that affirmative finding. So, I think just pursuant to the statute, I think that 24-hour operation, I think is we can't even consider that.
That's kind of where I was going. I wasn't really saying that I was in favor of it. I was thinking more about what is the way to monitor it and remedy it if there is a problem. But I don't have in principle, I'm not opposed to putting restrictions on it. I think I don't know whether there will be an impact to the comfort. Like you said, we don't have the facts. As far as we know, other businesses have been operating under these conditions, and I don't think we're aware of any complaints, but of course that doesn't mean that people are not uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. We just don't know. Mm-hmm. But I mean, for all I know, the finding that it does not impact is accurate. I just don't know.
I think that I think the procedural way that if we left it open at 24 hours, right, the procedural way that we'd have to reconsider it is people would have to make a complaint, right? So then people have to go out of their way to come here and make a complaint, and then it'd have to get added on into calendar somehow, onto this calendar to modify the times. Whereas if we say 7 to 5 or 7 to 6, he said he may work till 6, whatever time that we think is reasonable, and they need to work outside of those hours, they can come because it's their business and they can spend the time here versus a family of 4 and people don't have time to come here and complain. And the Brisbane model is always basically like there's no enforcement unless there's a complaint. So then people in the community have to make these complaints, come here. Meanwhile, they're trying to like raise their kids and go to work and do all these other things they shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
To make someone not make noise in their neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think that makes sense. I'd be a little bit liberal, and like the applicant said, or the representative applicant, it could happen. You need to get someone back on the road. You might have to work till 7 one night. I don't think that that's going to be the end of the world if it happens occasionally. If it's continuously happening until 8 o'clock at night or something, that's a problem. So I think I'd be okay with putting conditions on it that are just not 24 hours, but something, whatever it is, 7 to 6 or even 7.
He said 7 to 6, so that's
Oh,
why I
did he?
said, yeah, he said he could see someone working till 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And he said they won't come in until 7, so I said 7 to 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I think there's an auto body shop that's on 23 Industrial Way I looked at, and their hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yep.
So, 6 p.m. would be fine, consistent.
And what is Sunset? What's their, do we know? Sunset Garage?
They're gone.
Oh, okay, all right.
They were really great, but they're gone.
Convenient.
Okay, so we have the two conditions, right, about the drainage.
Yeah,
And
so my language for that was the business shall ensure that facilities are compliant with all environmental regulations as directed by Public Works, including any drains or draining.
Okay, so we'll have that, and we'll also put in there hours of operation, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Okay, then may I have a motion?
So I'll move to adopt or to approve the requested conditional use permit with the findings and conditions proposed by staff and the 2 additional conditions that were just mentioned.
Okay, in a second.
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay, I'll read the appeals process in a moment, but first let's turn to our next public hearing of the evening. And we have a public hearing concerning zoning text amendment 2025-RZ-02. The applicant is the City of Brisbane. This concerns zoning text amendments to update the city's existing accessory dwelling unit regulations to comply with current state law. This project is statutorily exempt from environmental review under CEQA Guidelines Section 15282H because it involves the adoption of an ordinance regarding second units in single-family and multifamily residential zones. Staff, may we have the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. As introduced, this item is to amend the city's ADU ordinance to be in compliance with state law. The city last updated its ADU ordinance in October 2020, and since 2022, the state passed a number of new ADU laws generally meant to clarify or streamline the production of ADUs and junior ADUs or JADUs. Some of the changes require all municipalities to streamline the permitting process, eliminate separate zoning review, permit more than one ADU under certain circumstances on both single-family and multifamily properties, and ministerially approve quote-unquote state-exempt ADUs and JADUs. Furthermore, there have also been changes or modifications to parking requirements, height limitations, and other development regulations for ADUs. A complete summary of recent changes made to the state's ADU law since 2020 is attached to staff's report. The draft ordinance would bring Brisbane's ADU ordinance into compliance with state ADU law, and it does not go beyond the statutory minimums except regarding the height limit for detached ADUs, which will be a discussion point for the Commission a little later. It would, however, make the following amendments. 1, cross-reference SB 9 legislation and the city's implementing ordinance, which established an overlay district. SB 9 regulates ministerial lot splits in single-family zones and establishes a maximum number of units allowed, including ADUs and JADUs, on the resultant lot or lots. The draft ordinance specifies one ADU is allowed per lot developed, provided that no more than 4 total dwelling units are permitted on a lot for which an SB 9 project was approved. This means, for example, that a lot split under SB 9 and developed with a duplex on each resultant lot would not be permitted any ADUs since the total number of dwelling units would already be at the maximum allowed under SB 9. while a lot with a duplex that was not a product of SB 9 could be allowed at least one ADU. 2, eliminate separate zoning review, i.e. no more ADU permits from the planning department. All conformance review for ADUs would occur as part of the building permit application. 3, increase the number of ADUs allowed on a lot. The state has changed the maximum number of ADUs allowed on both single-family and multifamily lots. Complete details are included in staff's report, but in short, on lots with single-family dwellings, there can be up to 4 total units. The primary dwelling, an attached ADU, a detached ADU, and an attached JADU. There are certain requirements and limitations in allowing this many units. On lots with multifamily structures, potentially 9 or more ADUs could be allowed, again dependent on specific eligibility criteria, including but not limited to the number of primary units. So, for example, a multifamily structure with 3 primary units would not be allowed 9 ADUs under state law, but it could potentially add 1 attached ADU and up to 3 detached ADUs, assuming all other criteria is met. And 4, updating terminology for unrestricted ADUs. Presently, the city uses the term unrestricted ADU to describe an ADU that is exempt from certain development regulations, most notably lot coverage and floor area ratio maximums. The state has updated this term to state exempt ADUs, and such units still carry the same exemptions from lot coverage and floor area ratio maximums, among other exceptions and exemptions. The draft ordinance would explicitly define these new types of ADUs and add a new section regulating state exempt units. But again, the draft ordinance does not go beyond the minimum requirements imposed by the state. Related to new regulations pertaining to state exempt ADUs, previously no ADU was allowed in the front setback area, including unrestricted ADUs, but state exempt units must be allowed within front setback areas. ADUs that are not state exempt are still prohibited within the front setback area per the draft ordinance. In addition to complying with the minimum statutory requirements imposed by the state, the draft ordinance proposes the following change from the state's minimum requirements. It would establish 18 feet as the maximum height for a detached ADU citywide, rather than as provided by the state, which can limit certain detached ADUs to 16 feet. The criteria for 16 versus 18 feet is largely driven by proximity to a quote-unquote major transit stop, of which Brisbane only had one in 2020, which was the Caltrain station. However, Assembly Bill 2553 has modified the definition for major transit stop so that now bus stops on Bayshore Boulevard and Valley Drive qualify as major transit stops. As shown on screen, nearly all of central Brisbane and the eastern half of the Northeast Ridge are within a half mile of a qualifying transit stop under the new definition, where the state mandates a maximum height limitation of 18 feet for detached ADUs.
It's not projecting on the screen.
Let's see, one moment. We got it on the Zoom feed. I'll come back and try to put this image up later.
Okay.
If the draft ordinance were to implement the state's maximum height limits for ADUs, a detached ADU in the 700 block of Humboldt Road, for example, could be 2 feet taller than an otherwise identical detached ADU in the 600 block of Humboldt, even though they are on the same street, in the same zoning district, and in the same sub-area, simply because the ADU in the 700 block is within a half-mile radius of a transit stop. I'll pause here for any comments or questions from the Commission regarding staff's proposed modification to the state's requirement for height. As a reminder, the draft ordinance would apply a uniform 18-foot limitation citywide for detached ADUs, and I'll try to get the image up for you.
Commissioner Funke?
I don't disagree with the proposal. I'm just wondering about the relationship between the height and the distance from a transit center. Like, what is the logic there? in general?
That's from the state. I think they wanted to just give a little more flexibility on some of these ADUs to be potentially up to 2 stories.
So it's about being able to add stories, like more square footage, I guess, if you're, provided you're close to a transit center.
I mean, it allows ADUs to go a little more vertical and still kind of remain a small footprint. It's not impossible to do it at 16 foot. We actually had a few in Brisbane that were able to do 2 levels and a 16-foot height limit. But I think the state is always looking for ways to lower barriers and make it easier for these ADUs, and let them go a little higher is something they wanted to do within transit areas. They also apply an 18-foot limit for any ADU on a multifamily property, regardless of its proximity to a transit stop.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gooding?
I have sort of a process question that would help me to cut to the chase. Is there anything in the amendments proposed by staff that isn't required to comply with current state law?
Just this, given an extra 2 feet to ADUs a little further than half a mile from a transit stop.
Okay, so that's the only one.
That's the only one
Okay.
that's in the draft ordinance.
I
Thank
would,
you. Thank
I
you.
would agree that we should make everything 18 feet for the entire city of Brisbane. I don't think that someone on the first half of Humboldt should get an 18-foot one and someone on the second half should get a 16-foot ADU, if that's what the state's making us do.
All right. Also for the commission to consider, ADU parking requirements from the state have slightly changed, but overall remain the same as currently adopted, which is 1 space per unit or bedroom. That's the slight change. They added per bedroom. Whichever is less is required unless exempted. The most common exemption is no parking is required when the ADU is within half a mile of any transit stop, not a major transit stop. Effectively, ADUs in central Brisbane are exempt from requiring parking because of this state exemption. However, we can require parking within the Brisbane Acres and the Northeast Ridge unless another exemption applies. In addition to the above exemption, JADUs and state exempt units are also exempted from parking requirements. While not proposed under the draft ordinance, modifying the attached draft ordinance to eliminate parking for all ADUs may help streamline design and approval of ADUs. Since 2020, the city has approved more than 20 ADUs, and none were required to provide parking due to one or more of the exemptions allowed under state law. And this includes ADUs permitted within the Brisbane Acres. I'll pause here again for any comments or questions from the commission regarding staff's discussion point regarding a citywide ADU parking exemption. But as a reminder, a proposed citywide parking exemption is not included in the draft ordinance.
I don't think we should have a citywide exemption on parking. We should do it on a case-by-case analysis, which is what they're doing right now.
Yes, it's how we do it now.
But, I mean, I don't know what you guys think.
No, I agree. I agree.
What was the comment? I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
I said, I don't think we should have a citywide exemption on parking requirements for ADUs. I think that they should do a project-by-project analysis on whether any of the exemptions that are provided by the state apply.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think it also heard that for any ADUs higher up the hill, there would still be a parking requirement, right? It's within a certain radius, like you said, in the acres.
That's the main one is if you're within half mile of any transit stop, but
Yeah.
there are other exemptions provided by the state that may also preclude us from requiring a parking spot. And so far, we have not yet been able to require a parking space for an ADU.
Yeah, but I agree with the proposal. I think that that should be reviewed probably.
As far as the Northeast Ridge is concerned, my understanding, I'm not sure about landmark, which are single-family dwellings, but the CCNRs for the condos do not allow any modifications of the structure. So I think we're only talking about potentially whatever landmark may or may not allow as far as ADUs are concerned. Is that correct?
I thought the state's laws trumped or,
The state has preempted
yeah.
CCNRs that
Right.
prohibit ADUs. So if it's any lot that has a single family or a multifamily dwelling has the right to apply for an ADU and can have an ADU if they meet the requirements.
Thank you.
All right, this concludes staff's report with a recommendation to adopt the attached resolution 2025 RZ02, recommending that the city council approve zoning text amendments concerning ADUs and JADUs to comply with state law. Any questions at this time?
One question.
Go ahead.
So this is, we are recommending to the city council at this point. We're not,
Yes,
Right.
this has to go to the city council ultimately.
so I think from my understanding of what Commissioner Patel said, we may have before us whether we want to recommend to city council that we expand the height allowance of 18 feet beyond what state law would currently
Through the chair,
require.
Yes.
the draft ordinance already includes that slight modification from state requirements to allow 18-foot citywide.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We were
Yeah.
optimistic here at the staff table.
I missed that. Thank you.
So
And-
it's just bringing it into, whatever, it's to even setting across. 18 feet's already out there, we're just doing it.
Yeah,
Okay.
18-foot is allowed for certain properties, certain types of ADUs. We're just making it kind of citywide. Everyone can have an 18-foot.
Yeah.
And before we get deeper into discussion, I wanted to give the public an opportunity to comment before we get further into this.
All right, the screen's up. You want 2 minutes?
Yes.
Can I just make a comment about the state law? It's such a load of crap that a bus stop like 292 bus qualifies as a high transit area. Like, you can't take the 292 reliably to go anywhere. Sorry, that's my 2 cents.
It used to be 15-minute headway, but they changed it to 20-minute headways, and if there's like a qualifying cross street, it's a little more complex. So that's why not all the stops on 292 routes qualify, but it has to be within a certain distance of another intersection with another bus route. But yes, it sort of expanded what stops are considered major transit stops. Again, the state trying to lower the barrier of ADUs.
I mean, I guess one way to just deal with the parking issue is just like not have any parking requirements, and then people have to like scramble for cars. I mean, to find parking on the street, and
Yeah.
they'll either have less cars or.
I was thinking a little bit, the parking thing, I wonder whether the way to address it is by always wrangling over how much parking space you have to create. There's other ways, right? You
Yeah.
can attach other incentives as to how many cars you can have in the city or something. You know,
Right.
I'm not sure that it all has to be solved through available parking, because then you're always feeding the need for more cars. And maybe we should stop doing that. You know?
Got about 30 seconds left.
I mean, it'd be kind of an interesting thing on the Baylands if you're like, no one can have parking there. You can
Oh,
create as
because
much housing.
it's within a,
Right, like you
Yeah.
can create as much housing as you want, but there's no parking. Like there's gonna be zero parking, and you can't park on the streets because they're gonna do street cleaning.
yeah, you probably have trouble selling
Right,
the homes. but,
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, 2 minutes has elapsed and no one has raised their hand.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is unanimous. Okay, let's finish up our discussion. We're kind of talking already, but any more thoughts we wanted to, go through? Okay.
Yep.
So I think we're good. So may I have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution 2025-RZ-02 as recommended by the council. I mean, recommended by staff.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, I will now read the appeals process. Anyone may appeal the action of the Planning Commission to the City Council, except where specified otherwise. Appeals shall be filed with the city clerk not later than 15 calendar days after the commission's decision. Exceptions to this rule include action for use permits and variances, which require 6 calendar days, and 10 calendar days for tentative maps and advertising sign applications. A form and fee is required to make an appeal. You may call the clerk at 415-508-2110. Next is old business. We have none. Items initiated by staff. Staff, are there any items to report?
Yes, excuse me, just 3 quick items. First is that on April 17th, council adopted the application ordinance 2024 RZ2, which had to do with development regulations for multifamily and mixed-use projects in the multifamily districts. That was essentially implementing SB 478. You all heard it last fall, and it was part of an omnibus, and that got reduced down by council. So that was adopted. Council also on April 17th introduced the ordinance to amend the inclusionary housing and density bonus regulations with some minor revisions, and that's scheduled for a second reading and adoption on May 15th. And then a farmers market pop-up workshop for 70 Old County Road, visioning, and an upcoming survey. So that's May 15th, I understand, for the pop-up, and a survey is going to be released also in mid-May. So that's visioning for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is items initiated by the commission. So we need to discuss whether we will change our commission meeting time. Either keep it at 7:30, change it to 6:30, or any time in between. So Commissioner Patel, we kind of discussed this at the last meeting, and we're pretty much going to defer to you since I think you have more of work or, traffic issues.
Does everyone else have a
No,
preference?
no?
Okay, these are the things that I'd be concerned about, which is all personal though. We do bath time at 6:30, so it'd be great if I could not do it at 6:30, so I could be there for bath time. But if staff wants to do it at 6:30, we don't really have that many meetings. I can miss a bath time every month. So if everyone really wants 6:30, I'm okay with it.
Through the chair, I think staff defers to the commission on this.
Everyone's deferring. I'm okay with 7:30. It's
Keeping it
fine.
7:30?
I don't have any strong, I suspect once we start getting into the really meaty items that are coming before us later in the year, we might be sorry we didn't start earlier.
Or are there going to be some meaty things that are going to take a long
But
time?
We can always revisit this anyway, so.
Mm-hmm.
And we can even,
Okay.
I suspect we could even decide to have a particularly, big, long session start earlier, just ad hoc, so.
Right, you can set special meetings, or you can
Right,
set a
right.
special time in advance that's noticed to the public as
Yeah,
special, but
I expect there will be a couple of meetings this year that will be pretty heavily attended relative to tonight. And we can visit that then, I think. And in the meantime,
Is that something where staff kind of has like an idea, this is going to be kind of a big one, so maybe we could, or is that not something that you guys can sort of project or?
Well, we know we have 4 EIRs kind of at various phases. We do have the Baylands
Yep.
meeting. That one has already been noticed for a 7:30 meeting time, so that can't change that one. But if the next EIR up, we can always look at an earlier start time.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll keep it at 7:30. Okay. We don't need to vote on it, we just, okay, we're good. Okay, so anything else any commissioner would like to address?
I just thought since we're talking about these two things, I just want to figure out how we can agendize maybe like a study session on, I didn't know what Michelle was talking about with the CCNRs
Yes.
upheld in the
Yes.
development area on the North Ridge.
I was actually going to bring that up to agendize for a future meeting. Yes, so the issue is 2 houses in the Ridge asked to enclose their patio space. And instead of coming before the commission, it was a type of thing that went before the zoning administrator. So how that process goes is zoning administrator makes a decision, and in this instance, approved both of the patios to be enclosed. And we got notice by email. I think we had like 7 or 10 days to object or appeal or something. And if 2 commissioners didn't, then it would go through. So that's what happened. So they both got approved. Yeah. I think one happened within the past year and one was like 2 years ago, I think.
I don't know. Maybe we could do a study session on it and
I
figure
would
out
like
what
to.
happened.
Including those facts. we
Yes,
don't
Right.
discuss if I
yes.
missed it,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, I actually emailed, last time Michelle Salmon brought that up, I emailed John Swicky and asked if we could take a look at that, because it seems like something that's maybe not a insignificant change, and I think it's something that maybe should come before the commission. So let's do a study on that, if those types of things should come before us first.
Is that something we can agendize, or how do we do that?
Yes, I'll bring it up with Director Swicky, and I think this would be something we could list as items initiated by the commission
Yeah.
and discuss it further. And
Okay. Can we do that for the, I mean, can we just, is there a way that we, when we, is there a possible way, like, for like the next meetings, we would just add that on there? And then if we didn't discuss it, we didn't because we weren't ready or something, but that way it doesn't fall off of the list of things that we're thinking about talking about.
Yeah, we would like to agendize it to where at least staff does some research, right? So that we're prepared to have a full discussion on whether things, need to change on that. So instead of just having it kind of up there, kind of in the clouds and not really, I'd like to have it more concrete. So can we do that, Ken? Like, can that be in the agenda to discuss that and kind of have a presentation on that?
I think that's reasonable that could be done. So we'll see what research we can pull together on those.
Yeah, and
those
maybe
points.
give a summary on the 2 projects that were approved. So then we can have that as a basis to discuss and, why that was done and whether something of that nature then should be brought before the commission.
And if we could, for me, like, I don't know what the CCNRs are or what the development agreement was up there. I don't know if we can get like a background in that, because that, I think, was before my time.
And was there another issue that Michelle raised that had to do with a hill? It wasn't just about,
Yes, it was
Everything.
some land, right, that was supposed to be dedicated.
Right. Through the chair, what she was referring to is that there's open space lands that were purchased by the developer along with the land that was actually for development. These were to be transferred to the county as open space, and that transaction has not yet happened. The city attorney has been working diligently for quite a long time, and there's been detail issues between the county and the associations that he was trying to work through. We think we're close to resolution there.
Okay, so is that something then we can agendize for an update? I mean, I don't know to what extent, is any of this like something that's confidential or something that the city attorney or staff can share with us as to the negotiations or what is going on?
Before I make any promises on agendizing that, let me put it to the director and the city attorney. I'm not
Okay,
sure,
okay.
but I will bring this issue forward to them.
Okay, great, thanks. And so the other thing, what we discussed was about a workshop on, penalties for code violations, for us to be more up to date on that. Can we put that on, something that we can have a workshop on?
That could be items initiated by commission as
Okay.
well as a.
And that's
item.
probably something that you're gonna need more time, to do than probably the next meeting, but if it can be agendized for a future, meeting. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, well then I will adjourn the meeting until our next meeting of May 22nd, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you.